back here on the Bear Clawcast. We are joined by sports journalist and podcaster and Bears fan, Zan Bando. Why don't you introduce yourself, Zan, and go into the memory that made you become a Bears fan?
Sure. So, thank you for having me on the Bear Clawcast. I really appreciate it. And my first Bears memory, I would say, December 2008. Alex Brown's blocked field goal to beat the Packers. Probably the coldest game in Bears history to keep the Bears then playoff hopes alive. That was my first memory when watching football, let alone watching the Bears. So, that would be my first memory.
Okay,
Although
I
it was a
like that
very long
memory.
time ago, I've been a Bears
So
fan ever
today we're
since.
going to go over the another heartbreaking loss to the Vikings in overtime. We lost 30-27, and then we're going to go over the Thanksgiving matchup for the Bears and when they take on the um, the Lions on Thursday at 11:30. And then we're gonna go over some other things like the how Caleb Williams played, uh, um, the stadium taxes was figured out, and some other news. So let's get into that. But let's start with the Bears and Vikings game. The Bears fought for all four quarters of the Vikings game, and to be honest, if Cairo Santos didn't get his first field goal blocked because it was kicked too low, there's a possibility that there would be no overtime and the Bears win. But we decided to collapse in our first quarter, in our first drive of overtime. So, what was your reaction to that, Zan? And then I'll ask Jack the same question.
Sure. It was just a tough loss. I kind of saw it coming midway through the third quarter, even when the Bears were coming back, that just something bad was going to happen. Things were going so well. They tied the game up. They got the onside kick. Then, of course, it goes to overtime, and the Bears don't do anything. And then, of course, Minnesota goes down and wins the game. It just seems like it's been a microcosm of the Bears season so far. They get super, super close to the finish line, but they just can't do it. Whether that's lack of discipline, whether that's play calling. You can't say it's on Caleb Williams because we were just talking about this before we got on here that arguably you look at Caleb Williams statistically, this might have been his best game as a pro so far in a game that he probably should have won. So when you look at this from a grand scheme kind of perspective, it's one of those where it just leaves you scratching your head like, okay, if one play goes this way, if another play goes the other way, you're looking at a win, and you're staring at 5-6 in the crowded wild card picture, and instead you're sitting at 4-7. You're at the bottom of the NFL. Saying what could have been. Now having lost five in a row after starting 4-2, it's one of those things where now you just got to focus on the development of your quarterback and making sure that your quarterback doesn't get hurt, considering he's the face of the franchise. And now it's just about building for the future. Well, it started out like, okay, could this Bears team sneak into the playoffs? And now it's going to be all about, okay, how can they sustain for next year? What's the future of this coaching staff going to look like? Number two and number three, how can you remind the fans that this is a rebuild and this won't happen overnight? Because this is what it is. It's a clear rebuild. They have a lot of new pieces on this team, which obviously starts up front with the quarterback, but they have a lot of new pieces, on the outside, and they have a very underrated rushing attack that I don't think a lot of people give the Bears credit for. So I think there's a lot of things from a 10,000 foot view that you have to go back and look at and say, okay, what can they do to improve for next year? Because that's really the only place where they're kind of currently sitting at is just in the fact that they have to now accept the reality that now this final month of the season is really
I
going to
can
be about
completely
development
agree.
over these next
Jack,
several games.
what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think this was another example of coaching failing us in an end of game scenario. There was a lot of like the players played well enough to win this game, I thought, but there was a lot of situations. You look at the DeAndre Carter muff punt with about 4 minutes to go in the third quarter, and then you also look at going for two when they were down two scores and scored that first touchdown. You can look at the Cairo Santos missed field goal, the coverage on third and long in overtime with Kevin Byard giving Jordan Addison about a 20-yard cushion on third and 15. There was just it was a little bit different if a Bears loss. Usually we're ahead and then somehow let the other team come from behind and win. But unfortunately, we weren't able to fully come from behind and win this game on Sunday. So, like we're going to talk about, a lot of positives to take away, but sort of some of the same negatives we've been seeing week after week this entire year.
Yes, that's a great take on it. So let's get into the positives though. Uh, Caleb Williams threw for 340 yards and two touchdowns. Williams had at least four big time throws throughout Sunday's game. Two to Keenan Allen, one to DeAndre Swift, and one to DJ Moore. Not only that, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen both had great games. Moore caught all of his targets for 106 yards and a touchdown. Keenan caught 9 receptions on 15 targets for 86 yards and a 1 yard touchdown to give the Bears an opportunity to go for two and a shot at an onside kick, which they recovered. The Bears also scored their first quarter point for the first time in forever, and it felt good to be the first on the scoreboard. So, what are your thoughts on that, Jack? And then I'll ask Don the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the skill position players looked really good this game. There was a ton of plays that Keenan Allen just looked like how Keenan Allen is supposed to look. Going over the middle, catching contested balls, giving Caleb an opportunity to throw over the middle. Some of the things you just mentioned, kind of like what I talked about, I just thought the players played well enough to win. There was a couple of throws Caleb made where my jaw physically dropped almost to the ground, and it's just frustrating that even when you see a good game out of DJ, a good game out of Keenan, a couple targets missing for Rome, and the offense humming for a large portion of the game, that it still doesn't result in a win. So, just frustrating.
For sure. Don, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I alluded to, just a minute ago. It's like one of those things where it's just like, okay, it's like a what could have been kind of game. They were in the game the whole game, and essentially, and as Jack just alluded to it, getting the momentum and scoring the first touchdown on the first drive, and then getting that fumble recovery down near the goal line. I mean, those were huge moments. I mean, sometimes people forget, even though this Bears team has the record they do, it's not like they won't be competitive in every game, which is why, when we get into this a little bit later and when we discuss this Thanksgiving game, I would be very wary in saying that, the Lions are going to be in a way for this Bears team, just considering how they've already played the division so far in the two games within the division that they have. And it's just one of those things where, if you can capitalize on those opportunities, if you have one play go directly your way, it could change the course of the game. So I think that's what the Bears need to remember is, when they get a lead, they need to hold on to the ball.
Believe it. You figure that out. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I continue from where I was? Sure. So, just kind of to add to what I was saying, when the Bears get these leads, the biggest issue that I'm seeing with this team is they're not protecting the ball, and when they get the ball with a few minutes to go and they should sit on it, they don't sit on the ball. I don't know, just some of the play calling to me, even with a new OC, and it's not fully his fault because he's still so kind of new to his role in the system. I just feel like part of this, if anything, if not most of it, is just on coaching, because again, if you make smarter decisions, especially when you're playing teams that are beatable teams, like Green Bay and like Minnesota, and this is taking no credit away from its season so far. They're having great years, but when you're in those games and you're at home, you got to find a way to close those out. And the Bears just have yet to be able to do that. And the schedule only gets even tougher from here, starting this Thursday against the Detroit team that's rolling and
Hmm.
will more than likely get the number one seed in the NFC if they keep winning. So
Yeah, I mean, great points,
that's
great
a
points.
critical fact of the matter
Um,
there.
Before we get into the next topic, we just want to remind everyone to like, comment, and subscribe to the Bear Clockcast here on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. There were a lot of good plays from Williams in Sunday's game, but my favorite was the tight window throw to Keenan Allen that resulted in a 40-yard gain. And it was hard for me to decide between that play or the 30-yard pass to DeAndre Swift that set up the first quarter points in a long time with a 1-yard score by Roshan Johnson. But Zan, when you were watching this game, what was your favorite throw that Williams made on Sunday, and then I'll ask Jack the same question.
Probably the fourth down completion with the game on the line that extended that final drive to even put the Bears in position to potentially tie the game. That's one of those throws that I didn't know Caleb Williams could make, but he made it, and he made it look pretty easy. So it just goes to show you that you can trust him on fourth down in those key situations, and that was that was definitely my favorite play. I like when he threads the needle because I think he realizes he's
Yeah,
super
absolutely.
confident when he
Jack, what
does
was your
so.
favorite play?
So I think it's
Yeah, I
awesome.
totally agree with that, and I think it definitely does show more of his maturation that he's able to drive those throws over the middle. But just from a fan perspective, I have to go with that throw down the sideline to DeAndre Swift. That was a prototypical play that we saw on a lot of Caleb Williams highlight reels coming into the league this year at USC, and it was nice to see him actually have one in a game. I mean, he had one in the preseason. If you guys remember Jerome Odunze down the left sideline,
I
but it's
do
just
remember.
nice to see him be able to get out in space and create something outside of the offense because that's something we all know he can do, and it's just nice to see him be given a little bit of freedom to do it these last couple weeks.
Absolutely. Great, great, great plays from Caleb Williams, which is what resulted in being drafted number one. So I think the Bears finally have figured out their quarterback position. Now they just need to figure out the coach position. So with Williams throwing for 340 yards, he now holds the Bears rookie passing record, previously held by Mitch Trubisky with 2,193 passing yards, which isn't that hard to beat. With 6 games left, Williams is on pace for 36 141 passing yards with 17 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. If he could get 3 touchdowns in a few games, I think getting to 20 touchdowns is possible. It is honestly too bad that we haven't had Thomas Brown as OC the whole season because if that were the case, I think it would be possible for Caleb Williams to get to 4,000 yards and be the Bears record holder for 4,000 yards. But in the 2 games since switching offensive coordinator, Caleb Williams has posted his 2 lowest pressure percentages of the season and his lowest average pass times of the season. As a result, Williams' passing efficiency has gone up from week 9 to week 11 to 12. Williams' completion percentage jumped from 61% to 71%. His yards per average or yards per attempt has gone from 6.3 to 7.1, and his average pass time is at 2.42 from 2.9 seconds. Um, So we've seen improvement in 2 weeks. So what's your thoughts on that, Zahn? And then I'll ask Jack the same question. What's your thoughts on that, Zahn? And then I'll ask Jack the same question.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that Caleb has gotten better statistically in every single game. It's good to see that his numbers are going up, specifically his completion percentage, as that is very difficult for a rookie to achieve, regardless of who you are. And, just with all the pressure around him, having been the number one overall pick, I don't think I was expecting to see this great of an improvement this late in the season, but it's obviously wonderful to see. He's keeping us in games, and as long as the offensive line can keep him upright, the Bears are going to continue to remain competitive. So, his number is increasing only does the Bears
Yeah,
wonders as
Jack,
they
what are
try
your
to figure
thoughts
out
on
what their
that?
future is going to be.
Yeah, I think it's been
So,
nice to see that we've been able to keep that low turnover rate that Caleb sort of not developed, I think was kind of forced into, like coached into for that last couple games of the Shane Waldron tenure. It's been nice that we've been able to see that limited turnovers married with some of the big playability that we were all really hoping for out of Caleb Williams these
For
past
sure.
2 games. Uh, like you mentioned, it's pretty much just a sweeping improvement across the board, and you can see it when you watch the game too. Obviously, the numbers you just read off show that, but just based on the eye test too, it seems like Caleb is a lot more comfortable these past 2 games. And I really don't think I was looking yesterday what it would take for Caleb to get to 4,000 yards, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the Bears are looking like they're probably going to be playing from behind in a lot of these games to end the schedule. We've talked about how daunting it is for them to close out the year. So Caleb needs around 275 passing yards per game to close out this season in order to reach 4,000 yards. So obviously this would be a decent bump up from what he's averaged so far this season. But when you take into account the couple rough games he had at the start, particularly that Tennessee game where he threw for under 100, I think it's definitely within the realm of possibilities that Caleb can somehow become our first 4,000-yard passer in a season that otherwise was lost.
I think it's possible. I was going to reiterate that later on in the podcast, but since you brought it up, I guess I don't have to. But what, do you think that is attainable at all, Zahn?
yeah, I mean, obviously, just with the way he's been throwing the football, I wouldn't put it past him. And just given that some of these defenses that he's going to be playing against coming up are rather suspect. I mean, you got to look at the Seattle game potentially as a game where he could throw the ball pretty well based on the weather. San Francisco game, it's very well possible that the Bears could stay in that game, so he would have to throw the ball a lot
Sure.
based on who the quarterback is for the 49ers if Purdy's going to be 100% by then. Then, of course, you have, the Packers rematch. Of course, in Lambeau, which is going to be very interesting. The Packers will probably end up playing for the division by that point in the year. So I think that there are a ton of defenses that Caleb is going to go up against over the next several weeks where I think he has a chance to hit that number or eclipse that number per game
Yeah,
to
I
give
mean,
him a chance
I hope it
to hit that
happens.
4,000 mark.
But we'll have to see. That, but across our fingers, because that's one record that I think every Bears fan wants to, just break at this point because we're, one of the biggest franchises and we haven't had a 4,000 yard passer. How is that possible? Um, but I mean, I cannot wait to see how this off season goes. So the next topic is kind of a a topic that I don't think is going to become a reality, but everyone's talking about it, so we might as well talk about it. So we've said multiple times that the Bears are going to be looking for a new head coach in the off season, and there have been rumblings that Kyle Shanahan may be on the hot seat for the 49ers. Now, let me say this: if you put him on the list, I think he's the guy that's at the plus 10,000 mark or something. But let's just say that Shanahan gets fired and Ryan Pohl calls him and says, "What do you want to coach Caleb Williams?" Because Shanahan is a great uh, head coach, and he knows how to build staff. He knows how to call plays. I mean, imagine Caleb Williams getting play calls from Kyle Shanahan. How 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 excited would you be, Zahn, if that were to happen? And then I'll go to Jack for the same question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would be excited for that. I would also be excited, based on how they finish the year. To like, even if it's not next year, like I could see, the reunion between Caleb Williams and Cliff Kingsbury. There are several different possibilities, but him paired with Shanahan would be phenomenal. Just given his previous coaching experience, what he's done in San Francisco, what he's done other places. I think it could work, and he's definitely an offensive minded coach. I would not be opposed to it, and obviously, I know that this is easier said than done. But if Ben Johnson ever considered leaving Detroit, I don't think I would be opposed to that either. Although, why would he leave Detroit when they're the best team in football and you got one of the most underrated coaches in the game? Kind of seeing you at work on a regular basis. I think it leaves the Bears coaching candidates to be kind of in a tough spot. But what I think is disappointing they they probably should have gotten Kingsbury and let Eberflus go at the end of last season, but of course they decided to keep Eberflus around, and now they're realizing the regrets of that. So they need to take two steps. They need to take one step forward or three steps back and really think about, okay, we need an offensive minded coach. Who's going to be the closest thing to the West Coast offense?
Yes,
And I
I
think
can agree with
Shanahan
that.
would be
So,
that would be
what
that
are your
coach.
thoughts on that,
So
Jack?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think you really hit on all the pretty major points there. I would just note that Shanahan would join Ben Johnson in my blank check offers for head coaches this
I'm pretty
offseason.
sure everyone would say that. I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
everyone.
those are just the two guys who obviously stand above the rest. And like Zan mentioned, it might not come to fruition just because why would Ben Johnson want to leave such a great scenario? He could just want to stay on as OC for a couple more years, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if the 49ers were silly enough to get rid of Shanahan, which I don't think will happen, I think it's more of a fan rumbling right now, but obviously
Yes,
that
that's
can turn into something more as the season progresses. But that would be one where the Bears would have to put in whatever their best
yeah,
offer is.
yeah. And let's be clear. We don't think that this happens. It's a rumbling right now. So let's talk about hypotheticals. So next, we're going to talk about the few positives that came on the Bears defense. We had a forced fumble and a fumble recovery at the 2 yard line. The Bears also got 3 sacks, and Montez Sweat got his first sack in a month, so that had to make me feel good because it's pretty obvious that he's been frustrated with losing lately. So, what's your thoughts on that, John? And then I'll ask Jack the same question.
yeah, I mean it's nice to see Montez Sweat, bless you, get back into a flow of things. Again, that's one of the
Trade,
reasons why we brought
actually.
him over in free agency when we did. And
That was a trade, actually.
I think it just goes to what's up. Fair enough. In any event though, I mean, I obviously think it's good because the Bears' pass defense has been struggling as of late, and the more you can get to the quarterback, the less time the opposing offense has to move the ball. Right? So of course, getting Sweat into the mix, stopping the run, making plays when you're supposed to. Doing better on special teams. Those things are going to be important, especially when the season winds down and you start to play some tougher competition. He needs to be the guy to anchor that defense. It was nice to see him take a step that I think we've waited several weeks to see. But it finally happened this week. And another thing too is the Bears need to be more disciplined. You can't be having stupid penalties in the secondary. You can't be having false starts. You can't be having illegal motions. At this point in the season, it's just inexcusable. You have to play the cleanest game you possibly can. Otherwise you can't win. It's as simple. It's as simple as that. You could be the Bears. You could be the Tennessee Titans. You could be the New England Patriots. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter what team you are. You you have to play clean football regardless of record, and things will take care of itself. That's something that the Bears really need to hone in on, especially when you're going into a hostile environment. But like you were this Thursday in a holiday week, in probably one of the biggest Lions games in the history of Thanksgiving for them. There's no room for error for that kind of stupidity, to put it simply. So they they need to
Yeah,
be better on
great
all
points. Great
facets
points.
of that aspect of the game.
So, however, like we said recently, uh, the defense still folded in overtime, which seems like a common theme in recent games. I wish we could stop talking about him, but it will be a recurring topic until Eberflus leaves, because uh, Eberflus is a terrible finisher, and that's just my take on that. What are your thoughts on that, Jack? And then I'll go to Zahn for the same question.
Yeah, kind of like you mentioned, Eberflus. It's just wild that he can't find a way to win one of these games. Like I get we're not a great coach team, and it's our first year with a rookie quarterback, and we're going to lose some of these heartbreakers. But it'd be nice to win at least one of them. Like if you had told me going into this game that we were going to hold Justin Jefferson to below 30 receiving yards and Caleb was going to throw for 340 pass yards, I would have said, okay, the rest of the defense can do enough that we will win this football game. And unfortunately, week after week, and especially this week, it just wasn't true. So it's frustrating. I think we're just beating a dead horse at this point until hopefully Matt Eberflus is fired, whether we lose our sixth straight game on Thanksgiving this week or after the season because McCaskey are sitting on their hands and think that some made up tradition that they themselves have started is more important than actually putting out a winning team and a winning franchise. But not much more to add than that, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. Zahn, why don't you add your thoughts on that? And then I actually have a question for you both that I want you to reiterate a little bit on.
Sure. I mean, there's not really much to add other than the fact that these are growing pains. They're going to keep losing games. And again, kind of like what I alluded to at the beginning of this podcast, this is a true rebuild. It's going to take 2 to 3 years to get this 100% dialed in. But I can guarantee you, within the next year, you're going to see a lot less of these heartbreakers and a lot more of these games go on the side of the Bears, assuming that the GM and the ownership actually take a look in the mirror and realize that we need better competent coaching. It's as simple as that. And to go back to the point that Jack mentioned, it's clearly showing that the Bears are playing as hard as they can when they're holding one of the NFL's top receivers, not just a top receiver overall, but a top receiver in yards after catch and stuff like that, to under 100 yards, even in a loss, is very, very impressive. So, I mean, it just goes to show you that they are close. They're super close. They have some of the right pieces around them. I just think it's simply
Yes.
partially to blame on the coaching
So
staff.
I found
So,
out today, actually, because of a video that I watched just before this podcast, that apparently the McCaskey family is considering selling the Bears, but the person that is adamant of not doing that is of course Virginia McCaskey, because she's like the only businesswoman in the football business. Now, if there are other women in the football business that are owners, I am sorry that I don't know them, but what would you sell the Bears at the end of the season, or what would you do? I'll go over to Jack, and then I'll ask Zan the same question.
Yeah, all I'll say on this one is I'll believe it when I see it. Being a White Sox and Bulls fans, I feel like I hear this stuff about Jerry Ryan's growth pretty much every offseason, and none of it ever comes to fruition. So before I get too excited and jump the gun, I'm just going to say I want to see what happens, which is a lame response, I know, but I just don't want to get my hopes up.
Zan, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, selling the team at this point, I mean, it should have happened a long time ago. Let's be honest here. I mean, at this point, I don't know. It's going to ultimately be up to whatever the McCaskey family decides. At this point, I wouldn't bet on a sale happening anytime soon. I think if it was happening, the whole world would know about it. So hopefully it happens. But right now, to me, from what it seems like and the way they run football
Yeah,
operations, it seems to me
I'll
like it's
believe
a
it when I
pipe
see it
dream at
too.
this point.
Next, we're gonna go into how the Bears take on the powerhouse Lions for the first time this season on Thanksgiving Day. With how Caleb Williams and the Bears offense has been performing, it would be an exciting game to watch, and we should be able to keep us in the game. The question is, can the defense keep it together? It seems like once the offense gets going, the defense shuts down. Last year, the Bears were 1-1 against the Lions, losing their first matchup 31-26, and then winning their second matchup 28-13. It'll be interesting to see how these matchups go this year because the Lions are 10-1 and have just bulldozed over every one of their opponents. So, how do you think Thanksgiving will go, Jack? And then I'll ask you.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one to look at. We have had a little bit of recent success with the Lions. Obviously, we just talked about the scores from last year. But a lot of that success came on the legs of Justin Fields. I don't have the exact stats, but I know one of Justin Fields' 200-yard rushing games in his career came against the Lions, and that was something they always struggled with. So I'll be curious to see whether or not the Bears utilize Caleb's legs a little more this week as they did against the Packers 2 weeks ago. And I think that could definitely be one of the keys to victory if the Bears have any chance of staying in this game. Because like you mentioned, the Lions are just absolutely rolling teams right now. So it'll be a tough game regardless.
Yes. Don, what's your thoughts on it? Don, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean the game's obviously going to be tough. Of course, the Lions have talent immensely all over the field. Of course, David Montgomery probably wants a piece of the Bears for obvious reasons. I still can't believe he's no longer in Chicago anymore. That shit really bums me out that he's not here anymore. But I mean, yeah, I mean this should be a game where Detroit's going to be tested. The spread's 10 points. Wouldn't put it past the Bears to keep this inside that number, given how the Bears have looked the last few weeks, just in regards to that metrics. But this is a game that I think Detroit probably should be able to pull away late and win in the fourth quarter. And again, I think it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last is going to win. And unfortunately, I think the Bears are going to make a mistake, either a fumble or an interception that turns the game totally in favor of Detroit. So it's going to be one of those games where I think the Bears are going to be playing well,
It
and it's going
always
to be
seems
another
like
one of
it's
those
one
one
mistake with
mistake
the Bears this
changes the
season,
entire
doesn't it?
complexion of the game. So
Okay, so
yeah, it
when you
does.
look at the Lions, they definitely have the better team. But when you look at the teams position by position, their matchups are a lot
Hopefully,
closer at certain positions. The Lions have a better quarterback because Goff has experience and Williams is a rookie. The Lions both and Bears both kind of have a two-headed monster with their running back groups, but the Lions have the upper hand because they are both utilized equally, and the Bears only use Roshan Johnson for goal line carries. On paper, the Bears look like they have the better receiving core, but in terms of production, the Lions have the better receiving core. it's hard to find a position on the line where the Bears have a leg up on them. I can't think of a position that's better on the Bears than the Lions. What's your thoughts on that, John? And then I'll ask Jack the same.
So can you kind of rephrase that one a little bit? I don't know if I
So,
fully
like,
heard where
when
you
you
were
look
coming
at
from for the question. I apologize.
the Lions position groups, like quarterback, running back, and receiver, you know, do you think there's a position on offense or defense that the Bears necessarily have a better core of players from them, or
I personally don't think so. I personally don't think so. I think Detroit's better everywhere. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is the engine that makes that offense move, and I think the defense is also very impressive. They have a lot of very, very unique players on the interior that can wreak havoc, and I just think no matter what, the Bears are going to be
Mhm.
outmatched at nearly every major skill position. So it's going to be about, can the
I
Bears
think
make
that's
more
a
plays
great
than
way to
Detroit?
take
I
it.
think is going to be the major key
Jack, what's
there.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, similar thoughts. The Lions are just one of the better constructed rosters in the entire league. And even when you mention, like, you look at the names that they have at receiver, and it's like, okay, well, the Bears should be better here. They're a prime example of the sum of the parts is, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. They just play very well as a team. And from offense to defense, they have unique guys like Zan was talking about with Brian Branch on defense. He's always a key guy to watch for them, making plays. Former Illini Kirby Joseph seems to come up with a pick every single week for that defense. So it'll be tough. I mean, there's not, like you kind of alluded to, there's
For
not
sure.
a clear position where we are better than them at. So it'll come down to, like Zan mentioned, making plays and hopefully maybe somehow pulling something out of our hat with the coaching wise. But we shall see.
Yeah, that's where we can't seem to do anything. Um, so next, uh, we're just going to remind you again to like, comment, and subscribe to the Bear Clawcast here on YouTube and Apple Podcast. So there are 6 games remaining in the 2024 season. Jack kind of alluded to it a little earlier, uh, but I'm going to go into to become the single season passing record leader. Uh, that leader is Eric Kramer with 3,838. Uh, Williams only needs to pass for 247 plus yards in each of those games to break that record. But the more surprising stat is Williams only needs 274 plus passing yards in each of those 6 games to reach 4,000 passing yards. With how Williams has played with Brown falling in place, I think it's possible to break both those records. Now, let me be clear, the single season passing record is the more realistic one that can be broken, but Williams only would need 27 more passing yards in each of those 6 games to get 4,000 passing yards. I think it's possible, but it might be a stretch with some of the defenses that we've been playing. So, Jack, do you think 4,000 is attainable? And then I'll ask Don the same question.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to steal your thunder and bring this up a little bit earlier. I had no idea
Don't
we were
worry
going
about
to
it.
talk about it. That's my bad. But like I said earlier, it's hard to be optimistic about this Bears season with the way it's going, but this is one thing that I remain optimistic on, and I will plant the flag right now. Caleb will reach 4,000 passing yards this year.
All right. All right. Zon, what's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, as I alluded to before, I think he could break it. It's him, or at least get close to the record. It's just going to be a matter of, can he limit
Yeah,
his
yeah, no,
mistakes to do so?
I
And if
want
he
him to,
can, I think
but
he'll be fine.
again, with the defense we've been with the defenses that we're going to be playing, it's going to be a question mark, but not out of the reach for a guy that basically has to learn two offenses in his first year. Um, next, I kind of oh wait, no, I didn't. Something that I wish the Bears would just do is fire Matt Eberflus and let Thomas Brown audition as head coach for the main remainder of the season and see if he would be a good fit to be leading man next year. Now, will the Bears do this? Probably not, because the McCaskies have a moral code to never fire anyone mid-season. But he's done a pretty good job as at his audition right now as offensive coordinator. But let's not forget that he was assistant head coach when he was with the Rams a few years ago. So he has experience with the team and he comes in high regard from Rams head coach John McVay. If Brown can keep getting 300-yard performances out of Williams, I think Brown should get an interview as an option for the head coach at the beginning of this offseason because he sure seems like a leader of men. It kind of reminds me of Mike Tomlin. Now, the question is, uh, would Ryan Poles and whoever else is on the search committee be willing to hire someone from a failed coaching staff? Do you think that they would do that, Zahn? And then I'll ask Jack the same question.
No, I don't think they would hire someone unless they were on a team that was still in contention for a playoff spot. I think they would need to hire either a championship winning coach or a coach that has several years of playoff experience. And in regards to Mike Tomlin, although that would be kind of a cool segue for the Bears with what he's doing with
Oh no
Pittsburgh
no
right now.
no
I think
no no! I wasn't
Stealer
I wasn't
for life.
saying
So
that
they're going to have
that the
to.
Bears would trade for Mike Tomlin. I'm saying that Thomas Brown reminds me of Mike Tomlin in terms of his intensity. I'm sorry
It's
for
fair to, that
clarifying that.
no. It's fine, and that's fair to say. And I mean, yeah, it would be great if Thomas Brown had a good addition, but then I worry that the Bears would be it would be, kind of in a situation where the
Sure.
Raiders
I
are
can
where
understand where
Antonio
that.
Pierce didn't work out. So I'd rather keep Thomas Brown on the staff. What I would do if I was in the Bears front office is I would make Thomas Brown the quarterbacks coach and hire a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach.
That's something to consider. Jack, what's your thoughts on that after hearing Zahn's take on it?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up that exact same point that Zahn just brought up at the end. I would be so scared of a Raiders Antonio Pierce situation where obviously the Raiders played better down the stretch last year and clearly wanted to keep Antonio Pierce, but when he's gotten his second full year this year, it has not looked good due to a number of factors. Obviously, it's hard to win games when you've got a rotation between Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and now Desmond Ritter at quarterback over there in Las Vegas. But I think Thomas Brown is definitely earning himself an interview, but I would also be a little bit hesitant to make him the interim head coach just because he's been so successful calling plays from up in the booth. And that would be something that would have
That
to
is a good
change,
point.
obviously, if he were to be the head coach to finish out this season, which is something we've talked about on the last podcast, I believe. So that would be my one holdup to him becoming the interim if Matt Eberflus is fired during this year. But I definitely agree with Zahn that while I think he deserves an interview, he would not be within my top 3 or maybe even 5 options for head coach next season.
That is a good point. Um, you know, a question that I have is, does Matt Eberflus know that he is getting fired? In my personal opinion, I think he can see it coming, but I don't think anyone has told him anything because he continues to not be able to close out games. So maybe he does know, he just won't say anything. Do you guys have that question, or what's your take on that?
I think he knows 100%. I think it's hard not to know. Like, we all know, and we're not in that building every day. I think you can see the writing on the wall, and guys like that. I mean, he's coached for a number of years. He can feel the pressure. He can tell that hey, he is the one ultimately responsible for how the team performs. So when the team's not performing up to standard, I think automatically as a head coach, you got to kind of expect to be looking over your shoulder and just worried about your job security.
Sure.
I think he knows to a certain extent as well. I just don't think
Yeah.
he wants to think about it until he has to think about it. But I'm sure he's getting tired though of answering the same
Oh,
questions
absolutely.
from reporters every single week. So that's probably another thing that's bringing him way down morale wise,
Absolutely.
is
I can agree
hearing
with
the
both of
same
you.
thing over and over again.
Okay. So I it was reported yesterday that the Bears and Arlington Heights settled on their tax issues, but they are still focused on the lake front property, which I don't really understand. First of all, you already own the Arlington Heights property, and other places that you could build the stadium are nowhere near as big. If the Bears were to decide to build on the Arlington Heights location, it would also get a lot of more people in the seats as well because people wouldn't have to deal with the crazy traffic in Chicago to go see this Bears team. I think that they should just uh, build in Arlington Heights because they already own the property. Why would you already own a property and then buy another property to build a huge stadium? So, Son, what's your take on that? And then I'll ask Jack the same question.
Yeah, I mean the whole new stadium thing is a total mess. I feel like the Bears just need to make a decision. It's as simple as that. You're confusing the public. I'm sure you're confusing the owners of those properties too, as to what you want to do with
Yeah,
them.
Jack,
They
what's your
just need to
take on
make up
that?
their minds. It's as
Yeah,
simple
I
as
literally
that.
have no idea what's going on, which is probably not the best thing to say on a Bears podcast when we're talking about something Bears related. But when it comes to tax codes and property tax codes and all this different mumbo jumbo that they're dealing with, I unfortunately am not an accounting or finance or banking major in college right now. I'm learning about the human body. So unfortunately, I can't bring much insight to how this is going. It just seems like a typical Bears interaction where no one knows what's going on, kind of a public relations embarrassment, and just drags on for way longer than it needs to.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, it's just ridiculous at this point. Um, we don't have any good news. It feels like. But that's going to be our Bears versus Vikings post game podcast and our Thanksgiving preview episode for you guys. We would like to thank Zan Bando for coming on today as a guest. Me and Jack will be back on Saturday to give you our reaction to the Thanksgiving game. I say Saturday instead of Friday because we're probably going to have to have a day of recovery from all the food that we're going to eat on Thanksgiving. We hope everyone enjoys the time with their family and has some delicious Thanksgiving food. Thanks for tuning in to the Bear Podcast today on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Have a good one, everyone.